Now, prior to that, Hitler had been expanding its fronts all across Eastern Europe. Now, the West provided concessions to Germany with the signing of the Munich Agreement, giving up the land in Czechoslovakia. Yet, Europe has tried to pin the blame on Moscow. Now, RT's Anastasia Volodina explains what exactly and actually preceded the attack in June 1941.
June 22nd, 1941. A date etched in history. Nazi Germany's attack on the Soviet Union ignited the Great Patriotic War, one of the deadliest and most tragic chapters of the 20th century. Today, history itself has become a battleground. The West, namely the EU, is portraying a major treaty between Germany and the USSR as the immediate trigger of World War II.
The Second World War, the most devastating war in Europe's history, was started as an immediate result of the notorious Nazi-Soviet Treaty on Non-Aggression of 23 August 1939, also known as the Molotov-Ribbentrop Pact, and its secret protocols, whereby two totalitarian regimes that shared the goal of world conquest divided Europe into two zones of influence.
But the European resolution fails to mention it was Europe's concessions to Hitler that paved the way for war. Let's set the historical record straight. By 1938, Hitler had already learnt a crucial lesson. Europe was unlikely to stop him. Germany openly rearmed in violation of Versailles, condemned but not punished. German troops entered the demilitarized Rhineland. Again, protest without action. In 1938, Austria was annexed. Step by step, each violation tested the limits. And each time, those limits held only in words. The Sudetenland crisis, which effectively led to Hitler's total occupation of Czechoslovakia, became the decisive test of appeasement. Instead of confrontation, Britain and France pursued compromise.
For His Majesty's government, there were three alternative courses that we might have adopted. Either we could have threatened to go to war with Germany if she attacked Czechoslovakia, or we could have stood aside and allowed matters to take their course, or, finally, we could have attempted to find a peaceful settlement by way of mediation. The first of those courses we rejected.
The solution was simple. Give the Sudetenland to Hitler. Czechoslovakia was not even part of the negotiations. On September 30th, 1938, the Munich Agreement was signed. Across Europe, it was hailed as peace.
I want to say that the settlement of the Czechoslovakian problem, which has now been achieved, is, in my view, only the prelude to a larger settlement in which all Europe may find peace. And we are determined to continue our efforts to remove possible sources of difference and thus to contribute to assure the peace of Europe.
But the Soviet Union saw it differently. Moscow was ready to support Czechoslovakia, but the aid system collapsed. Thanks to Europe. Soviet aid depended on France. France depended on Poland. Poland, through its ambassador to France, refused.
French Prime Minister Daladier posed a series of direct questions to Polish Ambassador Lukasiewicz yesterday. He asked him whether the Poles would allow Soviet troops to pass. Lukasiewicz replied in the negative. He then asked whether they would allow Soviet airplanes to pass. Lukasiewicz said the Poles would open fire on them.
And yet Hitler could still have been stopped in 1938. But the opportunity was missed. This was later acknowledged by both French and Polish military leaders.
During the conversation, General Gamelin took the opportunity to point out that in September 1938, the overall situation and the measures taken by France provided far greater opportunities for intervention against Germany than they do now. The Poles had no difficulty agreeing with this.
At Nuremberg, Nazi Field Marshal Keitel confirmed Germany was not strong enough to attack. But we know what happened. In March 1939, Germany occupied the rest of Czechoslovakia and turned toward Poland, bringing war closer to the Soviet border. The Soviet Union continued negotiations with Britain and France, but talks failed. Stalin later argued that the 1939 Soviet-German Pact, known as the Molotov-Ribbentrop Pact, was a consequence of these events.
During the course of the conversation, Marshal Stalin remarked that the Soviet government would never have signed a treaty with the Germans in 1939 had it not been for Munich and the Polish-German Treaty of 1934.
Instead of standing together against Hitler, Europe chose concessions and the partition of Czechoslovakia. Munich cleared Hitler's path further east, laying the road to the Great Patriotic War wide open, something Europe doesn't want to remember, for a reason.